Hey, can everyone hear me? Hopefully. Fingers crossed. Let me know if you're having issues hearing me. Just want to make sure I do a little test.
Let's be real. Every year, we set seemingly simple resolutions for ourselves.
Okay, good.
But spending 9 hours clipping...
Sorry, you're hearing me. Cool. Just want to make sure that you guys could actually hear me because I know I had a problem with that last time. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Continuum Trek. You are wonderful and amazing. I really appreciate it. No, you have to go. Oh, no. Well, thank you for joining for just a little bit, and thank you so much for giving. That means a lot. You are awesome. And say hi to your girlfriend for me, and enjoy your date as well. So I hope you have fun. Hello, everyone, and everyone else, I should say, saying hi to Continuum Trek. Thank you so much for joining me for this live stream. I know it's kind of a little bit impromptu, a little bit like, oh, I just sort of set it up yesterday, but I don't know. I had I was sitting here yesterday, and basically was like, I kind of want to just rant about Star Trek Picard and just hear what everyone else's thoughts are, and just talk to you guys about Star Trek Picard. Just sort of see what everyone's thinking about it and how we're feeling, especially after Children of Mars, because I had a lot of thoughts, and the thing with my reviews is I tend to just put it up right instantly, so I'm still kind of processing it. And I know I should probably do more videos a little bit later, but I like to try and, get that YouTube SEO and get it out there as fast as possible. Plus, it just fits my schedule. Also, if anyone hears any noise, I live near a construction site, and it's the middle of the day, so unfortunately there might be some noise that you hear here and there. Thankfully, I'm going to be moving at the end of the month, so that'll make life a little less noisy, as it were. Okay, so for the conversation, like I said, I want to mostly focus on Star Trek Picard. We can see where conversation goes, so please feel free to just, put your thoughts down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And we'll just go through and just hear what everyone's thinking. So I'm just gonna kind of react to what you guys are saying. And I'm sorry I'm saying guys. It's sort of in my brain. So if anyone's offended by the fact that that's a gendered word, I apologize. It's deep in my brain at this point that I'm trying to remove it from my lexicon. Okay. Let's see. Oh, thank you so much, Seal. I love this necklace. It's like one of my favorite things. I got it at a con in, I want to say Los Angeles Comic-Con 2 years ago. So I really adore this necklace. I also really love chokers. Chokers are just my favorite thing in general. I always adored chokers. All right. Yeah, so Rogue Synths. I see, Seal, you mentioned the Rogue Synths. So yeah, that's actually, I missed that completely in my Children of Mars review, and then everyone else picked up on it. I'm like, darn it, that would have been good to mention. But yeah, so it seems to me that they're building off of Measure of a Man from way back in Star Trek's, sorry if you're hearing stuff from my computer. Measure of a Man way back in Star Trek Season 2. And what I find interesting about that I don't think anyone has really talked about is, clearly I think that the show is going to be about rights, the rights of individuals and the rights of non-human individuals. So what I find curious is we have two versions of that here. We have the synths and we have the Borg. And clearly, I think bringing back Hugh and then also talking about synths and clearly building off that Measure of a Man idea, which is all about do we treat androids / synths as a race if we start to use them as cannon fodder, as essentially slaves? How do we, what's the morality there? And so I found that really intriguing, and that's such a cool Star Trek thing to do, because that's the question that the show kind of always hinted at in its individualized structure, but never really fully got there. I even think we even got to it with holograms as well, starting with the Doctor. The Doctor sort of just inherently asked that question: is do we have the right to dictate the life of a hologram? We got it with Moriarty as well. And so I find it interesting that the Doctor is actually coming back potentially. I know there was talks around Robert Picardo coming back for season 2, because I think that's sort of a natural evolution of a lot of the thoughts that they were going down that avenue. So that's actually super cool that they're actually kind of fulfilling that promise narratively. Thank you, Mr. Spiner, for the makeup. I've been trying to do more, just care a little bit more about my look. When I started doing YouTube, I'll be honest, not to get too much off the tangent because I don't want to stay on Star Trek Picard, but I was feeling a little bit depressed at the time. We had some stuff that was going on in my life and didn't really take much care towards how I looked. And life is doing a little bit better now, which is great. And I'm also looking to get some surgeries and things like that, to like just, I don't know, take better care of my mental health, and through that, my looks and my appearance. So I appreciate that, and I'm glad that people are responding to just me looking better, like actually taking care for how I look. So I appreciate that. Like every time I see it, I appreciate the compliments. Anyways, back to the main topic and not my own internal mental stuff. Canterbury will give me something to talk about with Trekkies in my life who only ever watched TNG and never watched DS9. Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things about Picard is that I know a lot of people who are finally picking up on that Star Trek is back from Picard. Like my dad he's the one that actually got me into Star Trek, but he doesn't like follow the minutia of everything, and he didn't even know Discovery was a thing. I had to like tell him about it when I went home for Christmas one year, but then he's the one that mentioned to me. I mean, I knew about it well before this, but he like sent me a Facebook message. It was like, "Hey, did you know Picard's coming back? That's a thing. I'm intrigued." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." Yeah, I'm glad that like they get starting to get some mainstream attention again with Picard, and I think that just comes off the back of like Patrick Stewart being in it, and everyone sort of recognizing it. Like I think if William Shatner had come back, people would have been aware of it. And unfortunately, as much as I like Discovery, it doesn't really have that like name brand actor, like big actor to sort of pull everyone in. The show looks amazing. This is the most hyped I've been for any show ever. I hope they don't screw the show up, and I hope it's amazing. Yes, me too. I am so pumped. Like what I'm going to be releasing sorry to promote my stuff, but I'm going to be releasing a Star Trek Nemesis video in 2 weeks, not today, next week. So next Friday, I'm going to be releasing a video on Star Trek Nemesis. And the point that I kind of make there is that I do like Nemesis to a degree. There's elements of it that I like. But what I'm really happy about is that finally Picard is like moving us past Nemesis. Like we're finally getting to see Star Trek go further into the future instead of just like, ever since Enterprise, we haven't really seen anything past Nemesis, other than like little hints and pieces here and there, like with the temporal Cold War and things like that. So I'm excited that we're finally going to be able to move past that point. But also with Nemesis just felt like there are moments that are good places to end those characters on, like with Riker and Troy. But for the most part, Nemesis just felt like a kind of lackluster ending for a lot of those characters. And while we got some continuation of that in like the literary books that I really, really love, I love the literary Star Trek verse. In fact, I think my favorite Star Trek stories actually come out of the Star Trek literary verse, not the actual show, which is a whole other topic. But I'm just happy that we're going to get like a conclusion to these characters that meant a lot to me, and I know to a lot of people, in a way that feels more natural. That it's not just going to be like, let's do the Next Generation again, but like we're going to actually get to see this progress. And I think that's something that I'm excited just for Star Trek in general to do. Like, I don't think Discovery retread ground. I actually think that it was trying to say something new and do something new with Star Trek, and I really appreciate Discovery for doing that. But it was kind of stuck in this iconography of, like, we're going to be in the 23rd century, so you naturally bring back Spock, you bring back Captain Pike. And as much as, I loved Ethan Peck's Spock, I loved Anson Mount's Pike, I thought they were fantastic. Rebecca Romaine as well in there. Fantastic job. But there's a bit disappointment in like being like we're using a lot of this iconography, and I feel like we could, like the brand and Star Trek, the franchise, is stronger than that. We can do new things, do new ideas. Next Generation, when it came out, proved that. And so I'm just so excited that we're finally going to be able to keep Star Trek propelling forward in an interesting way. Like, unlike Star Wars, which again, I liked the new Star Wars sequel trilogy. I didn't think it was amazing, but I did a whole video saying why I liked Rise of Skywalker. And it's not the movie I would have made, but the big problem I have with Star Wars is that it's all just intertextual. It's all just nostalgia. It's all just like, here's this thing that you liked. Let's do it again with a slightly fresh coat of paint without really building it out. And the only intriguing thing in terms of something new in that sequel trilogy was Kylo Ren. And even he was kind of a retread of Vader to a degree, but at least he had a little bit more that felt like a natural progression of that world in his relationship with Luke and Han and Leia. And it kind of like loses that towards the end. So it was like a little bit disappointing in that franchise that it just sort of just built on intertextuality and built on like, look at this thing that you liked before, and we're going to do it again, slightly remixed. And I can enjoy that to a point, but after a little while, it just sort of gets... It just has diminishing returns, because after a point, just referencing stuff, and people just go back to the thing they're referencing, or the people that are like, all right, I got the nostalgia that I wanted, and now I'm kind of over it. So I'm kind of glad that Trek, and I know that there's a little bit of like, look, it's Picard, and that's sort of selling the series, but I am glad that the series, at least kind of off the back of Patrick Stewart, generally based on what he was saying, that I'm just glad that it's starting to move forward. I always get into like the much more like philosophical points, don't I? Which I don't know. Like, someone was talking to me about like, you should start chasing more like the like Easter eggs and like the deep lore analysis. But for me, I don't know. I just like talking about the philosophy of stuff. I mean, that's the whole point of this channel, is just like, what's the philosophy behind this show, and like, what is this saying? All right, let me get back to the chat. I kind of haven't looked at you guys in a second. My apologies. Interesting that you should mention Moriarty. I was just talking about him with some friends, saying that the role arc character would have been a perfect fit for Irene Adler. Yes, that would have been actually very cool. I doubt they'll bring back Moriarty, just because like I think that actor, if he hasn't passed away, he's much older and probably harder to get. I don't know much about the actor, but I am curious about that. I feel they based on Mars attacks in Children of Mars that they are setting up the Federation in Picard to be sharp reaction. The Federation is tired, scared, and are withdrawing from the universe as hinted. Yes. So clearly, Children of Mars was... This is something that like a lot of people that have been talking in my comments, and I mentioned it in my review. Children of Mars was definitely aping off of 9/11. And especially for my generation, particularly, which is interesting, considering that we were much younger than like when Next Generation came out. So you think they'd probably chase the Next Generation age demographic a little more. But for me, I remember distinctly being in 6th grade when 9/11 happened. And so seeing Children of Mars was like, oh, this... I mean, I didn't have anyone who passed away in 9/11, thankfully. But I did know a lot of friends who did have family that were in New York City and were terrified. And so to just jump off of that iconography, I know some people took problems with it in the sense that like it felt like a cheap win in terms of gut punching emotion. Like some people were saying like, oh, 9/11, that's an easy way to hit someone's heartstrings. But for me, it's like, you don't really talk about... I mean, there was one movie, I think, Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, which wasn't very good. But you don't really talk about 9/11 in terms of the impact on my generation and how it's affected us. I think that's just because we were kids then, and so like we didn't get to make things, and now we're old enough to make things. So like our generation is starting to talk about that. It just was interesting to see that in Children of Mars. And that's something that you don't really talk about. And like I said, the only time I've seen 9/11, to my mind, be talked about in my generation was Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, and I wasn't particularly great. There have been some great TV shows that have addressed 9/11, like Battlestar Galactica was very much a discussion of 9/11 and a refutation of Star Trek Voyager as well. And then Enterprise actually did its own 9/11 with the Xindi arc, was kind of its own 9/11, which I really enjoyed the Xindi arc. Let's see. Jesse, it's good you mentioned Measure Man stuff. You wanted to take apart data as early as 2360s, so there's always been questionable motives. Yeah, and jumping off of that questionable motives part, a lot of people have been, with Star Trek Picard, kind of looking at Patrick Stewart's statement of like, I think, in fact, I even pulled it up here. Let me quickly pull this up. Patrick Stewart said in a Variety interview, he said, which by the way, his Variety photos, they were... I will say he's an older man, but those I mean, not that older men can't be sexy. He looks damn sexy, excuse my language, in that photo shoot. I'm curious if you guys agree, but I was like, Wow, Jean-Luc. Anyways, so in that interview, he said, in a way, the world of Next Generation had been too perfect and too protected. It was the Enterprise. It was a safe world of respect and communication and care and sometimes fun. In Picard, the Federation, a union of planets bonded by shared democratic values, has taken an isolationist turn. The new show, Stewart says, was me responding to the world of Brexit and Trump and feeling, why hasn't the Federation changed? Why hasn't Starfleet changed? Maybe they're not as reliable and trustworthy as we thought. Yes, he is disturbingly sexy. And yeah, his beard. Yeah, Mirror Picard. We'll get Mirror Picard with his beard. That's that'd be great. But what was the thing? Yes. So I know some people kind of harp on that. It's like the Star Trek should show us our ideals and like be this utopian future and less conflict between people. And that was like a lot of problems that people had with Discovery, was that Discovery had a lot of interpersonal conflict, like between the characters, especially at the start, a little less so as it's gone on. And it started to feel a little bit more Star Trek because of that. And I agree to an extent. I think that there is something to be said about like we need more utopian fiction to show us what we can aspire to and aspire to be. And show us like this is what humanity can become. And that's what I've always loved about Star Trek. But there is this interesting deconstruction that's happening in Star Trek. And I think it's an interesting deconstruction because like other franchises aren't deconstructing as much as they're just like referencing, as I was talking about before. It's like, oh, Star Wars is just referencing stuff. But like Star Trek's actually like looking at itself and trying to deconstruct itself in an interesting way, which feels intriguing. So while we do lose some of that utopian ideal, what's interesting about it is because Star Trek has built this like 50-year foundation of being like, look, this is a show about a utopia. Now we can take that concept and use that symbolism of that show to talk about like, how do we hold ourselves accountable to that ideal? What does that ideal mean to us when it is tested? And I think Discovery was a show, especially in its first season, that was like, how do we hold ourselves internally accountable? Like Burnham was someone who felt she had failed and she needed to be redeemed. And Discovery is the show as a whole is like her redemption. And it's like, how do we hold ourselves internally to our ideals inside of ourselves? And a little bit of like the Federation losing its ideals too. Like we get the mind stuff that Captain Pike mentions and things like that. But it's about holding ourselves to ideals. And I'm really excited that Picard is somewhat different. Like Picard is someone who, for the most part, I'm sure he has like a little bit of the weight of Mars Attacks on his back, but he is someone who we trust. I trust Picard to know what the right thing to do is at all times. And Tom Zaros 48, thank you so much. Really appreciate the super chat. That really, I'll get to your question in just a second, but I wanted to just acknowledge that I saw the donation. I really appreciate it. But yeah, no, I just wanted to like Picard is someone that we believe and trust, and so now Star Trek is going to be something about deconstructing how do we hold others accountable to that ideal of the Federation, the ideal of believing in ourselves and believing in a future that is good and for everyone. How do we say like, we're going to fight for the rights of androids. We're going to fight for the rights of the Borg, even when they harm us. And that's something that quite honestly is necessary today. Like regardless of politics, there's a lot of stuff that, I think someone's mentioning it here. I just saw it, like Mr. Spinem, do you think Picard will also reflect an American terrorist attack on Iran and all this Iranian crisis USA started? I don't think it's going to directly do so, at least not this season, because, obviously the show's already written and done for the most part now. But I do think that, as I was just saying, like, it is an important topic of, like, how do we take care, how do we hold ourselves accountable to our deals, and how do we, how do we treat others the way that they should be treated, and how do we, someone who's like, we're powerful, we have the power. Ooh, my screen just got really blue. We have the power. So how do we tell how do we, when someone holds all the power, it's very easy to forget those who need protecting. You don't see it every day, and you don't talk about it every day, and you don't anyone with privilege, I'm a white person, so I don't necessarily know the struggles of a person of color that they have on a daily basis. And I have to actively choose to try and engage and listen and learn about that. It's something that I have to actively choose to do. And sometimes I do that well, sometimes I don't. And so that's something that the Federation probably loses sight of. Like they don't know what the Borg go through. They don't know what the Romulans are going through. They don't know what the synths are going through. And so in many cases, they're perpetuating it. They don't even think about it. It's in their best interest to not see the synths as humans, as people, because they use the synths for their own purposes. So it's in their interest that they have a vested interest in not treating them like people. And so that makes it even harder when you have a vested interest in doing so. All right, so I want to get to Tom's question here. Do you think that Picard will perpetuate the current fans' generational divide started with Disco or repair it? Ooh, that is an interesting question. I don't think so. I think it might get some people. I think Picard, as much as I love Discovery is kind of a mess at certain points. And like I said, I am someone who said love Discovery, but that show has gone through a lot of different writing challenges throughout its 2 seasons. The first season, for any first season show's a bit rough. But then second season they had like new showrunners. First season they also had I'm blanking on his name. Guy who wrote American Gods, Pushing Daisies, Brian Fuller. He left the show. So that the first season that show was very mixed. Second season the show was very mixed staff. They lost their showrunners halfway through. So it was a bit of like trying to figure out the stories they went along. Whereas Picard feels like it's going to be a much more cohesive narrative that they have a standard writing staff they've had since day one, and it's going to continue all the way through season 1. I know that they I forget the guy who was show running the show that left for season 2, but at least he was all the way through season 1. So I feel like the show is going to be much better written and much stronger written. So I think that that's going to help the show. And again, like I said, as much as I love Discovery, I think that there was some writing mistakes that I think happens with any first season of a show, any franchise of a show that's sort of figuring itself out, and especially something that big. So it certainly makes sense that there were some mistakes made and some problems. And I think Picard is kind of building off of that. Like now we have, a team that knows how to handle Star Trek a little bit stronger. So I think the show will be better, and I think that'll help the fan divide a little bit. But unfortunately, you're just not like, there are people you're just not going to get. And I mean, I've learned that too from like my own content. Like, not that I'm on the same level as like Star Trek people, but you're not going to please everyone. Someone's going to hate what you make no matter what. And the fact that we live in such a politically divided era, and Star Trek inherently is a very, very didactic show. It is a show that is, problems here and there with how it portrays this, but it is a very, left-leaning political show. And if that's the case, it's going to piss people off. And those people who liked the show for whatever reason, which I don't really understand why they like it for their own certain politics. And again, you can be a fan of whatever you want to be a fan of, and I'm not telling you you're wrong. But, they're just going to want to hate on the show. So I think that those people are always going to hate it, and they're always going to exist, and they're always going to be like, forced diversity, and look at this woke show, and things like that. And again, and I want to make clear, because I've said this a billion times on my channel, you are allowed to hate Discovery or Picard or whatever. And you can even say that like you think it's political messaging is a bit too didactic for you. You think it's a bit too in your face. Like I even joked about this in my Doctor Who review, but Doctor Who had this like moment where it was like the woman said like, the guy said like, women aren't allowed to use that. Woman's like, well, I always find myself perfectly capable anyways. And that had nothing to do with the plot. It was just clearly a like, look, this is a feminist moment, which is pandering. It's pandering to me. I like that stuff. Sorry. But yeah, it is poking the bear a little bit. And I can understand criticism of that about like being like too in your face with it and unnecessarily poking the bear. I personally enjoy that stuff. But it is pandering, and that's what it is. And I'm the person they're pandering to. But I understand that being a legitimate criticism. So I'm not saying like if you're like talking about like wokeness in a show that you're inherently bad. But there are people who will do that whatever. Like if you just have a woman in a thing, like Star Wars, it was just like quite literally like, look, there's a woman there. Like they didn't really have a huge feminist agenda. It's just like there's a woman there. And of course that got like everyone getting the hate on Disney and Star Wars. And again, some of it deserved, but that's how it becomes kind of insidious, is they kind of base it off of like legitimate criticism and then sort of like expound upon it in really terrible ways. So I don't want to harp on this too much because it's just a path that kind of depresses me to a degree. But you're never gonna win everybody. There are people who are gonna hate it, and I think that Star Trek Picard, I'm hoping, will help repair it a little bit, especially if it's good. But I think there are always gonna be people who are just gonna hate on it. Like there are certain channels that I've called out before, and I'm not calling them bad people. I'm just calling the channels very problematic, have a lot of issues, and they do a lot of bad things. But I don't know them as people, so I don't want to judge them as people. But there are certain channels that they're gonna hate this no matter what. All right. So let me get back to some more questions. Yeah, and great question, Tom. Thank you for that. It was really good. Sorry, I'm just trying to look for like a good one that I want to like sort of thing. I think Disco is best when Frakes was directing. Wellington Smith. Hi, Wellington. How are you? By the way, I got your script. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but thank you for sending it my way. I will take a look at it, Wellington. But yeah, I do think Disco was really good when Frakes was directing. To be honest, what's interesting about Frakes, and I was talking about this with someone else, is like Frakes is such a great workman director. He's very much in the vein of a director of Apollo 11, the original one, not the documentary, Ron Howard. In that, like, I really couldn't sit here and tell you like what a Frakesism is, what's Frakes' style as a director, but he's always effective. He's always good at getting great performances out of his actors, probably because he is an actor himself or was an actor himself, and his like shots don't ever feel overly stylistic. Like Discovery has a tendency to be like, look, we're going to move the camera in a cool, crazy way because we can move it in a cool, crazy way. And I never really feel that with Frakes, but there's never anything like, yeah, that's a Frakes shot. That's what Frakes is. Like you see in First Contact and Insurrection, like I don't think there's any like distinctive Frakes style. It's just a very effective shot. Like he knows how to shoot a scene, he knows how to do it, and he knows how to tell it effectively and tells it well, and knows how to direct his actors. And that's kind of like what I appreciate him, and it's what makes him a great TV director. Film director maybe a little less so, but not that he's bad at that by any means. But he is probably one of the best TV directors out there. His stuff on the Orville is great too. His stuff on Discovery is phenomenal. So yeah, I really like Frakes as a director. That sort of thing. Feds are insidious, they corrupt other cultures, expansionism versus diplomacy. Yeah, the feds are insidious, they corrupt other cultures, expansionism via diplomacy. This is actually a video that I want to do in the future, and I want to try and do it in that style that I did for the Toxic Fandoms video that I did, where it was like a faux Star Trek episode. I'm planning on doing a couple of those. It just takes a lot of time to script out because it's like characters as opposed to like me ranting at a screen for a while. But one of the things that I always want to talk about with Star Trek is it's very much based off of ideals of American imperialism. That like we know best. We're gonna Prime Directive is a little bit involved. Like we're gonna let you do you do your own thing. We're not gonna come in, but we're gonna be over here slightly judging you because we're good and we know what's best and we're good people. And again, the Prime Directive is a little bit of an addressing of that to a degree of like trying to critique American imperialism, but like very much Star Trek is like about American imperialism, especially what it's based off of, about like going to other cultures, seeking out new life and new civilizations. It kind of goes off of that. And sometimes when you seek out new life and new civilizations, you don't treat them so well. And so it's just kind of hard because Star Trek, its ideals of American imperialism are kind of deeply ingrained in there. And there's also like a lot of like other things too, like individuality being very much a Federation ideal. And there's like, it goes back and forth because what's interesting, especially about the Borg, I always found the Borg intriguing, especially as I got older. Like they were always terrifying to me, but like as much as I don't want to lose my individuality, but Star Trek has also always been about community and building out communities. And so like the Borg, to a degree, obviously, are like an interesting extension of that philosophically, like extending to everyone. But it's also about like everyone becomes the same and you lose the diversity aspect of community and like how we need diversity in there. So it's sort of an interesting discussion within that. And so I'm like, I don't know. It's such a hard topic to like dissect, and I have to do a lot of research on it. But one of the things I did like about Discovery season 1 was it kind of was talking about that, like the hegemony of culture, the melting pot idea. And I always like hated the idea of the melting pot because like in Discovery, the Klingons are like, oh, they come in peace, and they come in peace. We'll lose what it means to be Klingon if we ever join the Federation, because Federation will talk about our ideals, but Federation will talk about their ideals, but eventually, if you join the Federation, you become sort of a like bland, lose your culture kind of deal. And to a degree, they're not wrong. Like I think Federation tries to be more respectful of other cultures overall, but I mean any type of that sort of oversight, you're inherently going to lose it. And so I always hated the idea of the melting pot, because it was sort of like, okay, you're going to lose your culture. You're going to lose part of yourself to become like this mono American culture. And I always like the idea of like culture being like a salad, where there's different flavors within the salad. There's like tomatoes, there's onions, there's, croutons. So there's all these different aspects of a salad. They're all these different flavors, but they coalesce into something greater than the whole. And so I always kind of liked that metaphor better. And so I think that that's an interesting sort of thing. And I liked how Discovery season 1 kind of touched upon it. Sadly, they kind of lost that thread a little bit, unfortunately, which was kind of sad, because I found that to be one of the more intriguing threads that they set up at the top. But it's something I would really love it. And Wellington, of course, I'm going to validate your opinion. You're wonderful. You're wonderful, Wellington. Have I been reading the Countdown to Picard comics? No, I haven't. I kind of have kept up on the plot of them through like Ket Wolski's channel and stuff, because I watch all of his videos. I am going to read them, but I typically, for like short mini series like that, I try to just wait until they're done and just read them all at once. Just it's easier for me. The ones that I like, I read the Star Trek Year 5 comic, which is like the ongoing Star Trek comic right now. Which, by the way, if anyone's interested in Star Trek comics, there are a few good ones out right now, but the Star Trek Year 5 one, which is telling the Year 5 of the original series, so good. So good. The art is gorgeous. The story is gorgeous. If you want a good Star Trek comic, you go get Year 5. I think there's a collection of the first 6 issues coming out in the next month or so. So get that, because that comic is great. But yeah, no, I have not read it yet. I'm planning on reading that, and then also the book that's coming out for Picard. I'm planning on reading both of those in the near future. I just have not yet. Also, is my sound really good? I have my mic kind of distant from me just because my desk is here, but I just want to make sure that I'm sounding all right. So if anyone lets me, if my sound's really distant, let me know. I don't really know how good they are. Let's see. Oh, hey Maggie, I see you in the chat. It's good to see you there. Most species are just humans with different faces, so you could say they're designed for Vulcans or Andorians just as easily. Sorry, I'm not sure what we're referring to. I lost the thread of some of the comments, so apologies. Like the High Council would have dissolved if they wanted to join the Federation, no caste system or monarchy is allowed. Yeah, the High Council would not have dissolved if they wanted to join the Federation. I mean, yeah, I mean, the Klingons are such an interesting facet. I mean, I'm doing a whole video on the Klingons as well that I've already written and discussed, but like, I don't know. I've never loved the Klingons, and what's most interesting is when they're kind of played like a very honor-bound culture, but then when they're just played like warriors, I kind of lose interest. I just kind of like, and there's a lot more deep lore to their culture that makes them much more interesting than just like, hey, we're gonna fight stuff. But I don't know. For some reason, I never loved Klingons. They're probably my least, for me personally, they're probably my least interesting race. I actually find the Andorians a much more intriguing race because they're almost in a similar vein. They're very much a warrior culture, but they got a little bit more going on for them, in my opinion. I think that the Andorians you saw it with like Strand and Enterprise. That's where we really got the development of Andorian culture. And I really kind of like that. And also probably I'm manipulated a little bit by the fact that Enterprise is my first weekly show. So seeing like the development of Andorian culture, like the Anar episodes were fantastic. So, and their relationship with the Vulcans. So I've always just been more of an Andorian person. Again, if you're hearing sound, there's their construction sites, so they're throwing stuff right now. So apologies if you're catching any of that. Apologies for thank you for everyone. Let me know that I sound fine. That's good. Yeah, the Romulan Star Empire was terrible on paper as well. I mean, the Romulans are much more. I'm trying to remember what like the Romulans are based off of. I can't instinctively remember. I know that they were kind of based off a little bit of the Cold War, but I saw were the Klingons at the time. Like everyone was based off of the Cold War. But what's interesting about the Klingon or Romulans, I should say, is that they were also honor bound, like the Klingons. We got hints of that in Nemesis, where like they. Oh, Christy, I see you're leaving. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you. I'm gonna miss you. But yeah, the Klingons. Sorry, no, Romulans. That's what we were on. Romulans. I found the Romulans to be a really intriguing villain because they were much more like set up like they were the intellectuals. They were like they're going to manipulate and spy and do all these things. But they also did have a degree of honor. That they, we saw this in Nemesis where like Shinzon wanted to just destroy the Federation, kill the Earth, whereas the Romulans were kind of like, well, no. We want to defeat the Federation, but don't want to out and out destroy them. We don't want to out and out like murder all of them. We don't want to genocide them. We just want to rule them. And so they were much more like the sneaky kind of people. Like you see that in Enterprise too, with like they're manipulating events, trying to destroy the peace talks and things like that. And again, the Anar episodes, those come up here again. So I really kind of liked the Enterprise crew. Romulans. Jeez, I'm losing threads. Apologies. The Romulans for that specific reason. I always found them to be a really intriguing race. And Reman Uprising, yes. Another thing, like we got kind of that Nemesis, but I want more about the Remans. I mean, it's kind of naturally set up. I'm curious, they don't even talk about that in like anything. It's like Romulus got destroyed. I'm like, but what about Remus? Did Remus get destroyed? They all just dead and we don't care. That's a whole race. And like the fact that, it'd be an intriguing thing to come up with, like, there's this discussion of like the reunification of Vulcans and Romulans. Like we want to bring them together, but like, how do Vulcans deal with the fact that like Romulans enslaved an entire race and they're going to have to end that when they reunify? I guess it's kind of a moot point now because Romulans have mostly been destroyed. But it is an interesting sort of question. That's the other thing. I'm sorry, I'm looking at questions here. That's the other thing. With everyone in TOS being based off the Cold War, it only makes sense for the new series to base characters off of radicalist jihadis. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I liked about Enterprise, to talk about Star Trek Enterprise here, is there are some faults with the Xindi arc, but what I enjoyed about it is it's Star Trek's 9/11 discussion, where it's like, okay, Earth gets attacked, just like 9/11. It was a surprise attack. No one really knew about it. We are kind of dealing with the trauma of that as a culture. So Enterprise goes out and invades this other space that the Xindi control. And when they initially go in, they just see like Xindi. It's just Xindi. But as we go through in that season, we start to see Xindi's culture develop. You just see that there's different factions within the Xindi world. And I really like that because it kind of mirrored, what Americans should have been learning. Is that like, we go and invade Afghanistan, we go and invade Iraq, but there are cultures and people there that are just as diverse and have different opinions as we do, different factions, different thoughts. Some are, have horrific views and do horrific things, but others are just normal people that are now having to deal with America coming in and doing also kind of some terrible stuff as well. And just kind of stuck in the middle of that. And of course, they're going to kind of naturally hate us, but also hate, other people in their own culture. And it's just like, I really liked how Enterprise kind of addressed that it wasn't just like, hey, look at this Xindi, they're evil, we're going to get our retribution. But it's like, hey, this culture is just as diverse as our own. And we can seek to try to defend ourselves, but also respect the values and views of another culture. And I thought that was actually such a unique message that people kind of don't really talk about with this Xindi arc very much, and how much it really was dealing with the ramifications of 9/11 and the war in Afghanistan and the Iraq War. And it's such a way that you very rarely saw. You usually see that sort of view coming from oh, the Americans are we're bad, we're terrible people, and we kind of were in that war. But it was also about learning to respect other cultures and learning to see people who initially were your enemies as your friends, or at least people you could respect and understand. And that felt like such a uniquely Star Trek thing to me. And so I really I loved the Xindi arc for that exact reason. Especially when I was a young kid. That was the first season of any Star Trek show that I watched weekly. So that was such a good building off point. Let's see, let's move over. Let's see what else we can do. Okay, can we do a quick recap of what we know about the Picard series so we can do some calculations and a bit out of the loop? Yeah, okay. So I can try and get some basic theories. So this is spoilers for Picard, if anyone's intrigued. And also, before we're going, I should also say, if you can, I see there are 38 people in this chat. If you can hit the like button, I'd greatly appreciate that to help boost the stream, get more people to see it. So to go over everything that I can come up with off the top of my head, Picard, I had a few notes. So first thing we know, and that we've seen in Star Trek, Children of Mars, is that Mars gets attacked in a very 9/11 type of mode. It's caused by the synths. So we can presume, all we know specifically is that Mars was attacked by a group of rogue synths. What we can presume based off of Measure of a Man is that the synths were a race created by Maddox from the episode Measure of a Man in Star Trek. He probably got a hold of B4's body from Nemesis, the Data clone. And because Data did not have rights, since B4 did not have as many rights as Data, was not seen as a full person, he probably took his brain and dissected him and was able to make synths and able to make all these synths. And because of that, was then able to create an entire race that then the Federation enslaved and used for grunt work. Now, why they wouldn't use holograms to do that, I don't know, but probably because the technology didn't exist to have them out and about. But no, they use synths as grunt work, kind of in a very by some would be like a very Blade Runner-esque scenario. And then they rebelled, and just like in Battlestar Galactica, and that led to the Mars attacks thing. Now, additionally, we also know that Picard, based on the comics, was dealing with the Romulan problem, like Romulan diaspora after the destruction of Romulus, and trying to get people out from the Hoba supernova that was like coming and destroying everything until Spock was able to stop it, and then that's how it sets off the Kelvin timeline and Spock going back in time. But he was able to stop the supernova. But a lot of Romulans are basically dispersed because Romulus has been destroyed and trying to rebuild their government. And we know Picard was dealing with a fleet to try and rescue a bunch of those people to try and save their lives. Now, there's been some conjecture. Like, a lot of people thought that Picard was going to... they've already announced Picard left the Starfleet because he felt guilty over something. And a lot of people naturally assumed that it had something to do with Romulus because he was leading that fleet. And we see that in the comics, and we kind of got hints at that. But because of this rogue synth attack, it seems to be hinting that like the destruction of Mars by the rogue synths, as we see in Children of Mars, is the reason that Picard left the Federation, that he felt some sort of guilt for that for some reason. And so that's kind of interesting because it's like, how do these two connect? How did the Romulans him dealing with Romulans connect with the synths? What's the reason? Maybe we were using synths to like as cannon fodder to go and save the Romulans, and Picard did that. Maybe he felt some guilt because he didn't stand up enough for androids' rights like he did with Data in Measure of a Man. There's a lot of questions there. There's a bunch that we can speculate on that, but we don't necessarily have any specifics on that. So then we also know that the series picks up several years later. After this, Picard is retired. He's back in, he's living on Earth. But then a girl comes who says, like, I have a feeling towards you. I was drawn to you. And so Picard feels the need to go out and rescue her, save her for some reason. And so he goes off on an adventure because Starfleet won't protect him. And Federation's probably doing some terrible stuff that he doesn't agree with. So he has to like get his own crew to try to stand up for our values and do the right thing. And some of that has to also do with the Borg in a certain extent. It looks like the Romulans are subjugating the Borg to a heavy degree, are, treating them terribly. And it looks like since it's Hugh, they're Borgs that have regained their individuality. So the question then becomes like, do these Borg also have rights now that they are individuals? And do Borg have rights even when they're not individuals? Which was an interesting question raised by Borg way back in Star Trek The Next Generation. Like, do Borg have rights inherently? So that's basically everything we know and all the speculation that we can know. The big question is like, who is this girl? Is she Borg? Is she a synth? Is she Romulan? Is she related to Data? Is she like a Lal for some reason? Like a version of Data's child from way back. So there's a billion speculation points that we can kind of pull out of the threads. I've talked about it earlier, but I want to make sure I'm checking out the chat because there's some interesting things. Kyle Brown says, Jesse, can you name a decision a captain has made that you 100% disagree with and would have done the opposite? That's a hard one. I'm like trying to think of one off the top of my head that's like, I thought that was a terrible choice. I mean, I always kind of had problems with insurrection to a degree. In Picard's decision to like, he's just like, we're going to let these people live on this planet. There was just a lot of like, I don't know if I necessarily would have disagreed with how he handled it in the end, but it felt like there was a lot more morality in the movie Star Trek Insurrection that the movie never really explored. Like, Baku clearly were aware of warp-capable civilization. So if that's the case, is there a way to have negotiated with them to get their youth-enhancing stuff? I mean, the youth-enhancing stuff could have saved tons of lives. And did these people need to be immortal? And again, I don't necessarily think there's a right answer to that. I mean, I don't agree with like taking the land away from them and taking their planet's resources without their permission. That was totally wrong, obviously. But I feel like there's like nuance in that movie that kind of like got glossed over because big action movie. What are you gonna do? You can't get into all of that. Cisco gassing the planet to get the Maquis. I actually don't remember that one off the top of my head. It's been a while. I need to go. I'm trying to do a rewatch of First Next Generation Deep Space Nine, so I'm missing some ones here and there. So I don't necessarily remember everything. So apologies on that. Another one that like, I mean, the obvious one, the one that's like super easy to kind of like question my own self on would be in the Pale Moonlight, with Cisco bringing the Romulans in without them being aware of the decisions behind that. And I would say, I don't know if I could have done that. I don't necessarily disagree with Cisco in his decisions in that episode. I mean, there's some moral stuff that I think is wrong, obviously, but do the ends justify the means in that case? I don't know. I don't think that's the thing. That's what's good about that episode. It's like, I don't necessarily know what I would have done. And it's clear, like, his decision probably saved tons of lives, probably won them the war. But I don't know if I would have done the same. Which is, again, a testament to that episode, because it frames it that way. It frames it like, what would you do? What is this the right thing to have done? So yeah, that's a good one. I have to think more about like other decisions that I like would disagree with. I think the other one kind of like immediate pops to mind is Tuvix from Voyager. I think personally Tuvix had the right to live. And I as much as it sucks to have, killed Neelix and Tuvok to do that, and much as I didn't like Tuvix, found him annoying, Tuvix had a right to live. And I don't necessarily agree with Janeway's decision to have to kill Tuvix. That's probably a whole episode in and of itself, a video I could do. Yeah, can I imagine trying to make that decision, though? I would have no idea. Yeah. Picard killing members of his crew were assimilated by the Borg. I found that strange since he was able to be de-assimilated. That's always, hopefully Star Trek Picard itself, the show, will actually bring this up. But, like, yeah, all Borg are able to be de-assimilated. We saw that, like, literally a Borg, like, 7 of 9, she was assimilated as a child, can be de-assimilated. So does that mean you have an inherent duty to try and save all of them? I would say the answer is no. You have a right to self-defense first. And I think the scene in First Contact, where Picard like murders the Borg with the Tommy gun in the holodeck, while a bit aggressive, I do think he had a right to kill them there. Because like they were coming after him, he needed to protect himself. His callousness towards that moment was chilling. And his callousness for the fact that he just killed 2 of his crew members was chilling. But I think the line that allows us to side with Picard in that moment is that like he is justified in defending himself there. He is justified in protecting himself, and I'm forgetting the woman's name, but he is Lily. Lily is her character's name. He is justified in protecting himself in that moment. His enjoyment of it, his using that moment as like a catharsis for his trauma, is and like not caring that his crew was killed in that moment. That's cold and callous, but we can still understand it, and it allows us to side with him as a character, as opposed to if like he was just going out and like, I'm gonna just torture and murder the Borg. That would be unforgivable. That would be something that would ruin his character. And I think that's what Borg the whole episode was about, was like, do we have the right to do these things to these people, even if they aren't people? because every Borg, like, and the other question is too, like, we tend to like be like, okay, the Borg are people. We see them as people when they are stripped from the collective and become individuals again. But like, the collective as a whole is an entity. It is a whole thing. It is like a bunch of cells that are growing. So it's like, does the Borg collective have right to exist? Now, certainly it doesn't have the right to add more to its collective. It doesn't have the right to harm others as they do. So that's its own question. But does the Borg collective have a right to exist? Do we have the right to destroy an entire civilization? It's a culture. As much as we may be horrified and disgusted by it, it is a culture. So, I mean, it would help to know a little bit more about I mean, I don't ever want to know the origins of the Borg, but it would help to know the origins of the Borg to answer this question of like, did the people who became the Borg wish to become Borg in the first place? And if so, is there a way where they get to allow to be stayed Borg without losing, while also freeing everyone else in the Borg? If we could do that, if we could be like, all right, the people who want to be Borg can stay Borg, and the Borg will stop attacking, stop assimilating others, but these people stay Borg, I think that's perfectly all right. So then if we allow for that, if we don't think that they inherently need to be destroyed just on their base culture alone, then it's like, all right, where's the line? Where do we do it? And I think it's defending yourself and defending others, obviously. So it's an interesting question. I don't think they established solidly enough that Tuvix would actually die from the separation as long as Tuvok and Neelix maintained their identities of the time they spent as Tuvix. He lived. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong there that Tuvix lived in a sense, but it was clear in that episode that he had a right to, that he did not want to die. And so you could make the argument, but it's still like choosing to do something against his own bodily autonomy. Like, he has the right to choose what to do with his body. I mean, to a degree, I mean, this can get contentious depending on people's views, but you could look at it kind of like an abortion narrative. Like, Tuvix had the right to choose what he wanted to do with his body. And Janeway did not have the right to tell him how to treat his body and how his body should have been used. In fact, actually, I might do a video on that. That's actually a great parallel. I can talk about abortion rights through Tuvix. Thank you. That's actually a great brainwave that I got from that. But yeah, so yeah, I think that might have been the point. It's been a while since I watched Tuvix, but yeah, it might have been a metaphor for abortion, which is why it's so weird that Janeway does it. I mean, I understand like logistically why they did it, because it's like Neelix and Tuvok were characters that they wanted to have continue on the show, and Tuvix was just sort of a one-off. But so I understand like the need to reset the status quo of a TV show, that the reason they did it that way, but it just felt like, I don't know. I think Tuvok had every right to do that. And actually, jumping off of that, now I'm thinking about it, the other one that if I can think of another captain's decision that I would disagree with, it would be Similitude in Enterprise. Again, number one, he shouldn't have created the Trip clone in Enterprise to begin with, and it's kind of messed up. That whole episode's kind of messed up. It's an intriguing moral question, and I understand, and I like that episode quite a bit. Don't get me wrong. It's one of those, like, I don't know what I've done in those situations. Like, you're trying to stop your entire civilization from being destroyed by the Xindi. So you need your engineer, and so you need to do this. It's a thing. It's a thing that you like morally is wrong, and it's wrong, but you need to do it. And sorry that my screen's the sun's kind of shining through my window here. So you need to do it, but I don't necessarily know if you have the right to do it. He should not have killed Sam. I forget the Trip clone's name, but I don't think it was the right thing to do. But I also understand his motivation to do it, and that's like, I think that's some of the best episodes of Star Trek where. It's not the episodes of Star Trek that I would want always to do, where it's like the moral gray point. I mean, that's something that Star Trek should do and can do, and it makes for some of the best episodes of Trek. But I want there to be like more clear morals. Like, that's kind of like the fable telling. That's kind of the point of Star Trek, and at least for those shows. But some of the best ones are when they make us questions like, what would you do in this situation? And you can understand why the characters make the choice that they did, and but also say like maybe I would have done differently, or maybe I would have chosen differently. And I think that that's what like In the Pale Moonlight and Similitude did really, really, really well, and what Tuvix didn't. Because I think Tuvix didn't present us with enough of a pressing need to get Tuvok and Neelix back. Like Tuvix could have done most of what those two did. And so to lose him felt a little bit selfish on Janeway's part to do that to Tuvix. Whereas like Similitude and In the Pale Moonlight, well, morally you could argue that the things that those captains did in those moments were wrong. You could also you can understand why they did it. So I think that that's sort of the distinction I would make between those two episodes and Tuvix in those two. But also, it's been a while I've seen Similitude, so I might be wrong on that. But I need to do a rewatch. I've been like rewatching An Exploration Deep Time, but I just need to rewatch all the shows, especially if I'm going to be doing more videos on them. I kind of like piecemeal what I watch, and I should just do a whole straight rewatch. When Archer robbed the ship, made me really dislike the show. Good writing, but ick. Yeah, I agree with that. Let me just see what else. All right, so we're gonna wrap out soon. So if anyone has any like last minute questions for me to answer, let me know. But just a couple other things, since I have everyone's attention, that I want to talk about, just to sort of promote stuff. Right after this video goes off at noon, I have another video coming out, so please make sure, if you can, right after this, if you can just go over to that video and give that video a like. It's a video on J.K. Rowling and Death of the Author. I really want, I'm trying to boost my channel a lot more and really trying to get it promoted. So it really helps me out if people just go over and like something, comment, even if you're just like, hi, I'm here in the comments. So if you could check that out, I'd be greatly appreciative. The other thing too, just to promote, and this, I always feel awkward asking this, but this next month, ending this month, I'm moving, and I am getting surgery next month for trans-related stuff, and a lot of that's really expensive. So if any of you can, and by no means feel need to or anything, but if anyone's able to give to my Patreon, or even I set up a PayPal account, if you can give to my PayPal, any of that just means the world to me. It's really going to help me in the coming months, just with surgery and with moving. That's going to be a big financial hit, and so I'm kind of like having minor panic attacks about it. So I'll be able to get through. So by no means anyone feel any need to do that. But if you can, it is greatly appreciated and helpful. And that's all I'll say about that. I don't want to harp on that too much, because asking for money always makes me feel awkward. Kyle Brown, I know you are asking when is my Watchmen synopsis coming out. That's actually a video I'm super proud of. You can already see in my thumbnail, you can see the work that I did for that. That is going to be coming out. Oh, thank you. Oh, John, thank you. You are a beautiful human. Thank you so much. Sorry. Oh God. Yeah, sorry. Money stuff. I appreciate it, guys. Yeah, sorry. It means a lot, and I don't know ever how to thank you. Sorry, money stuff. Watchmen. Yes, it's coming in 2 to 3 months. And it's 2 to 3 months. Sorry, my brain's off now. It's coming in 2 to 3 weeks. It's coming. So Star Trek Picard airs in 2 weeks. So there's a surprise video that is coming out the day before Picard that I don't want to spoil for anybody, but make sure you come and check out my channel the day before Picard. I've been working on a project with a few other Trek YouTubers that I'm super pumped about to tease for you. So if you're looking for something really cool with a bunch of Trek YouTubers that's related to Star Trek Picard, be on YouTube the day before Star Trek Picard comes out, that Wednesday. So keep an eye out for that to tease you on that. Then the day of Star Trek Picard, I'm going to be doing a review of Star Trek Picard, and then the day after Star Trek Picard airs is when my Watchmen video is coming out. I still have to do a little bit of tweaking and editing on it. But if you're really looking forward to my Watchmen video, the day after Star Trek Picard comes out, and it's actually one of the videos that I'm most proud of. That's my Watchmen video and my Half-Life 2 video that I have coming out next month are probably the two that I'm most proud of, because I actually like went above and beyond. Like in Half-Life 2 when I actually went to New Mexico to film that. So my family lives in Mexico. It's not like I flew all the way out there just for that, but it was just cool to do that. Haven't been impressed with the Picard previews, and that's okay. Johnny P, you're saying you haven't been impressed with Picard previews. That's totally okay. And something that I've said too, I'm excited for Picard. But as I've said throughout earlier in this video, if you don't like Picard, if you don't like Discovery, if you don't like the direction Star Trek is taking, that's perfectly all right. And I understand that's frustrating to some people. And all I can say is the best way to talk about that is either A, have your don't watch the show, and say clearly and respectfully why you're not watching the show. Like say like these are my critiques. Put them out in YouTube video, put them out online. Just get the conversation going about why you don't like what you're seeing. And so either or watch the show and just be critical as well, and do it that way. But as long as you're not being disrespectful towards other people, like saying like, oh, you know, women shouldn't be in TV shows or be the leads of shows or things like that. As long as you're not doing that stuff, or you're not being like, you know, Kurtzman sucks and I hate him. He's the worst person ever. It's like, don't do that. Like, yeah, Kurtzman may not be making the stuff that you like, but the dude's a guy who's trying to write stuff for you. The dude's trying to make a living. And he's trying to make a living doing something he likes. And sometimes he's making stuff that people like. Sometimes he's making stuff that people don't. Don't hate on him. You can critique him. You can critique his work. But I always hate, unless the artist is like an atrocious human. I always hate people who hate on creators because it's like, you know, they're trying. Like I'm trying. I create stuff. I'm not going to create stuff that everyone likes. I'm just learning. So don't hate creators. Like unless they're terrible people. There are certain creators, I won't name names here, but we all know certain creators, like they're atrocious humans and they deserve to be called atrocious humans. But if you're a creator, just be a creator. So, yeah, if you don't like Picard, you're not excited by it, that's cool. And I support you wholeheartedly, and I'm hoping I like it. I mean, I haven't seen the show, so maybe I'll hate it too, but I'm looking forward to it. All right. So I'm going to be heading out. Thank you everyone for joining me on this live stream. I'm going to be doing another one this month that'll be a little bit more personal stuff. So if you have any personal questions for me or just random Trek or geek related questions, be checking it out. I think I'll be in like 2 weeks. So come back here for a live stream there. And the only thing I will ask is if you can, if you have the time right after this one, this live stream ends, please just quick jump over to my other video on J.K. Rowling, which I think just went up. It should have just gone up. Just give it a like if you can. Watch it all the way through because watch time always helps. But if you can, just go over and get that video a like right now. I'd be super appreciative of that. It would really help me out. And I don't know. The videos I'm making this year are just they're really making me. I'm really proud of the work that I'm making right this year. So I'm looking forward to all that. And thank you specifically to John, Andrea Jones. Apologies if I screwed up your name, but Andrea Jones, John, and I know someone else gave earlier. Tom, I think Tom left, but thank you to the three of you for giving. Like I said, I got a little bit choked up there. Money stuff is going to be interesting, and it gives me a lot of anxiety this year. So thank you for giving. That truly means the world to me. So thank you to the three of you. Thank you to anyone who supports me either on Patreon or just watching my stuff. Like just coming here and supporting me, it means the world to me. Like, sorry, I'm gushing. I should just end the stream, but like, I don't know, like having this outlet to like, I just ranted at you for an hour and to talk to you for an hour. And the fact that like I have a creative outlet for the stuff that I want to do, and there people respond to it and talk about it and create a community around it, means a lot. You guys mean, yeah, I mean, like, you know, I wish I get a chance to know each one of you. I can't like know each one of you individually, but it means a lot to me to have this outlet. You all are wonderful, wonderful, amazing humans, and I'm just really, really glad to be a part of it. So, all right, everybody, I love you all. I hope you all live long and prosper. Looking forward to you checking out my other videos and looking forward to watching Star Trek Picard with all of you. So check out my J.K. Rowling video, check out other stuff, and you are amazing. Also, I just saw SPLE clips. Thank you so much. You are wonderful. Guys, thank you. I got to end the live stream or else I'm going to start crying. So thank you all. You guys are all beautiful, beautiful humans. And I wish you all live long and prosper and have a wonderful weekend.